My name is Savannah Carter, 36 years old, living in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. There are moments, long buried, when a sound, a flicker of light, or a fleeting scent tears me from the present like a blade. Like that afternoon in April when the phone rang at 2:41 p.m. Is this Savannah Carter? I'm Officer Jameson from the Denver Police Department. I'm sorry to inform you, your husband, Mr. Ethan Carter, was killed in a traffic accident. I couldn't breathe. The pounding in my ears was so violent I thought I might collapse right there. But that wasn't all. Your daughter, Ava, is in critical condition and has been taken into emergency surgery at St. Luke's Hospital. I heard myself scream, but everything around me felt wrapped in thick cotton. The world shattered. My life crumbled under a single sentence. I don't remember how I managed to call my mom. My hands were shaking so badly I had to dial twice before it went through. Mom, Ethan's gone. Ava's in brain surgery. I don't know what to do. I choked out like someone spiraling into madness. On the other end, my mother, Audrey, answered in a disturbingly calm voice. Savannah, this isn't a good time. Your dad and I are at Mike's restaurant celebrating Mason's birthday. He just turned 30 and all the relatives are here. Can you call back later? I thought I misheard. I repeated, Ethan's dead. Ava might not make it. I'm at the hospital. Alone. She hesitated for a few seconds, then said, Oh my, that's terrible. But we're in the middle of lunch, you understand? We can't just walk out mid-meal. Your father said he'll call you tonight. I couldn't respond. I just stared at the phone, unable to comprehend how anyone could say those words. But then I remembered, I'd been used to that kind of treatment for a long time. I drove to the hospital in my SUV like a ghost. Ava was 10 then, had spent the past month practicing for her first ballet recital. Ethan promised he'd leave the construction site early to take her, since I had to present our Q2 investment strategy at work. They never made it to the theater. The driver who caused the crash was a man named David Bowers, 44, drunk, driving without a license, ran a red light at 19th and South Broadway, and slammed directly into Ethan's car as he turned left. Police said Ethan died instantly from massive head trauma. Ava was rushed into surgery the moment the ambulance arrived. I didn't get to see Ethan one last time. When I arrived, the ear doctor, a man with tired, sorrowful eyes named Roe, led me into a private room. We're deeply sorry, he said. Ava's in extremely critical condition. She suffered severe brain trauma with a hemorrhage in the skull. We're performing a craniectomy to relieve pressure. I remember nodding, dazed. I asked, Can I see my husband? A nurse walked me down a long, freezing corridor, each step echoing into the earth. Ethan lay there under cold fluorescent lights. His skin was pale, lips bluish. The hand I used to hold every night now felt like marble. I collapsed on the floor, screaming, Ethan, don't leave me. I can't do this alone. You said you'd always be here. There was no reply. Only the mechanical wheezing of a respirator in the next room. I sat by Ava's side in the ICU for the first 3 days. She looked so tiny in that oversized hospital bed, her head wrapped in thick white gauze, a breathing tube taped between her nose and mouth, surrounded by machines like steel armor. I whispered into her ear, I'm here. You're not going anywhere, okay? During all that time, my parents never showed up. No message. No call. Not a single flower. I pulled myself together, for the first time in years, and called them that 4th morning. My father, Charles, picked up. I asked, Are you two planning to visit the hospital? Or at least call her? She's your granddaughter. He sighed. Savannah, Mason's under a lot of pressure. He's got an interview with a new construction firm, and we're helping him get everything ready. Ava probably won't remember much anyway. And Ethan, well, what's done is done. I hung up mid-sentence. Not because I didn't have the strength to argue, but because I finally understood. The people I once called family had chosen to stay on the sidelines of this tragedy. They chose a birthday party over shared grief. Silence over support. Me. I'll never forget that moment. Because in the depths of my despair, the only thing keeping me upright was the little girl clinging to life by a thread. People say grief fades with time. But it doesn't vanish, it transforms. It seeps into your bones, becomes part of your breath. 3 weeks after Ethan's funeral, while Ava remained in a light coma and the doctors were evaluating her post-op neurological damage, My mom sent a 5-word text. Connor's thesis presentation is soon. No mention of her granddaughter. Not a single word about the man now in the ground. Connor. Always Connor. I remember the day I received my bachelor's in economics from Boston University. It drizzled lightly, and I trembled from a mix of nerves and chill, gripping my diploma in a rain-soaked robe. In the crowd of cheering families, no one waited for me. Mom texted, "The car broke down. Your dad had to help Mason." But 2 days later, I accidentally saw a photo of them celebrating Connor's birthday at Ruth's Chris. When I got my first job offer from Alice Munro, a strategic consulting firm, I called my dad right away. I got it. They picked me over 300 applicants. I still remember him exhaling into the phone. "Oh? So, what about Mason? He applied too, right?" Never once did I hear, "That's amazing, you earned it." Not once did they say, "We're proud of you." When I married Ethan, at a small ceremony with 40 close friends held at a countryside ranch near Aspen, soft snowflakes drifting down in November, I waited in the bridal suite in my lace-trimmed gown, hand trembling from emotion. Mom called, indifferent. Dad dislocated his shoulder. He can't drive. Hope you understand. I didn't cry. I just touched up my lipstick, took Ethan's hand when he walked in and whispered, "We're getting married, with or without them." He smiled. "As long as I have you." Ethan was the first place I ever felt chosen without needing to prove myself. When Ava was born, weighing 6 pounds 6 ounces, pink and scrunched like a little peach, he cried. Ethan, who rarely showed emotion, dropped to his knees beside me, kissed my forehead and whispered, "You just gave birth to our whole universe." We called Ava our upwind spark. She arrived after 3 miscarriages, after months of hormone shots, ultrasounds and heartbreak. She grew up with bedtime stories from her dad, afternoon cookie baking with me, and Sunday tent forts in the living room. As for my parents, every year they sent Ava a birthday gift. Always something pre-ordered from Amazon, never hand-wrapped. Not once did they show up for her dance recital, attend a music lesson, or even make a video call. "Mom, where do Grandma and Grandpa live?" Ava asked when she was 8. I said, "In Chicago, sweetheart." She nodded. "So they must be super busy, huh?" I gently squeezed her shoulder and replied, "Yeah. Some grown-ups get busy very easily." I used to tell myself I was used to being overlooked, that I was strong enough to build everything on my own without needing their approval. But standing in the ACU watching my daughter lying motionless in a tangle of cold machines, I realized there was one thing I had never gotten over: the feeling of being left behind. A week after Ethan passed, his family flew in from North Carolina, bringing pillows, cinnamon toast, and a stack of childhood photos to share with Ava. His mother, Joanne, even with her slow steps, patiently read to her granddaughter each night. "I believe she can hear everything," she whispered, gently stroking Ava's hair. "And my mother?" She texted, "Connor just got invited to a startup advisory group. Might be a big success." I didn't respond. One evening, as I sat alone in the waiting room, Megan, my closest friend from college, showed up with a bag of coffee, almond cookies, and quietly took the seat beside me. After a while, she asked, "Have they called you yet?" I shook my head. "Want me to talk to them?" I let out a dry laugh. "Why? They're not missing. They know everything. They just don't care enough." Megan stayed quiet, then placed her hand gently over mine. Family isn't always the people who made us. Sometimes they're the ones who show up with coffee at 3 a.m. and ask nothing at all. I looked over at her, saying nothing. But deep inside, something cracked open. I no longer wanted to ask. Or wait. Or be chosen. I already had someone to believe in. Someone who loved me right. My husband, now gone, but who left behind an imprint that wouldn't fade. A child fighting for every breath in that cold, humming room. And friends, chosen family who brought not just comfort, but their whole hearts to stand beside me when I was at my lowest. I hadn't planned on calling my parents. But they'd be back soon enough. Not for Ava. Not for me. But for something else. Something they thought could be divided. What they never understood was loss. I had tasted enough of it. And I was ready to protect what was left with everything I had. That Thursday morning, snow began to fall lightly, just enough to chill the air, not enough to blanket the emptiness inside my chest. Ava was still in the pediatric ICU at St. Luke's, her head wrapped in white gauze, breathing faintly through a machine's rhythm. I stepped out of the ICU, passing the white wall with the staff rotation board. In my hand, my phone lit up with an email titled, "Funeral Confirmation, Ethan Carter, Grayson Hill Mortuary." I blinked at it, rereading the subject line as if a typo could undo the truth. 3 days earlier, I had crouched on the hospital bathroom floor, smelling of disinfectant and pale light, dialing the funeral home. "Carter, my deepest condolences. Would you prefer cremation or burial?" I gripped the phone until my fingers went numb. He always said he wanted to be buried near the oak trees, where there's sunlight. I said it like he'd just gone out and would be back soon. They asked about the casket, the handles, the floral trim. I was silent. He liked simple things. "Of course. We'll arrange a traditional oak design, no carvings." Would Monday at 3 p.m. work for the service? I nodded even though no one could see me. Ava still hadn't opened her eyes. That evening, Ethan's mother called. "Savannah, if you need help, I can handle the flowers and call the church. You're all the way in Charlotte. Don't stop me. Louis and I are flying in on Saturday. We told the doctor, we're postponing his knee surgery." I swallowed hard. "Thank you. Ethan was my son. Your family. No one should do this alone." A short sentence, but it made me collapse against the edge of Ava's hospital bed, hands trembling. That night, my mother texted, "Where should we send flowers? Your dad's back is sore, so he can't travel far." I didn't reply. Sunday morning, I printed the condolence cards using the hospital staff printer. Megan had already bought soft white cardstock in ash gray envelopes. I sat by the window, folding cards while glancing at Ava's heart rate monitor through the glass. Every time someone walked by, I looked up as if expecting someone to tell me she had woken up. But no one came. No miracle arrived. I chose the photo to place beside the casket. Ethan wearing a white shirt holding a smiley face pancake. Ava took it when she was 7. Ethan hated that picture, said he looked like a drunk bear, but I kept it because it felt real. That Monday at noon, I left medical instructions with the head nurse, going over every detail. Change Ava's forehead dressing at 2 o'clock, check reflexes at 4, slow the 4 drip if her blood pressure dropped. I put on a black coat and sat in the taxi, knees trembling like I had a fever. Megan sat beside me, silent, just holding my hand. Andrew's chapel was washed in a cold gray tone, the stained glass windows casting pale light. The first 3 rows filled quickly. Ethan's co-workers from the Landmark Lofts project, college friends from Georgia Tech, neighbors bringing flowers and foil-wrapped sandwiches. My family wasn't there. Only one bouquet arrived from Chicago. With deepest sympathy, the Linwood family, Audrey and Charles. No personal note for me. No mention of Ava. No signature. Pastor Elliot looked at me, waiting for a signal. I stepped up to the wooden pulpit, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I stared at the photo framed in candlelight. Ethan didn't like talking about death. He believed in what came after. A bridge, a building, a road leading somewhere better. But I'm not here today to talk about loss. I'm here to share how Ethan lived. I talked about how he taught Ava to build Lego, how terribly he sang while doing dishes. People laughed. A quiet, trembling laugh, but a real one. "He wasn't perfect," I said, "but he was always there, for me, for Ava. He listened. He turned around when you called. That's all I wish for anyone. Someone to hold your hand when the world is at its worst." I didn't cry until I returned to Ava's side. Still room 5, or still the steady beep of the ventilator, still her tiny porcelain cold hand resting on the thin blanket. I whispered, "Daddy's at peace now, baby. And I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." I placed the only card I had on the nightstand. Not from her grandparents, but from Ethan's old coworker, John. The card read, "He was proud of you. We all saw it." I folded it closed and laid it beside the wedding photo that had been face down for days. That night, I sat down and wrote an email requesting an indefinite leave from work. In the notes section, I typed, "Lost partner. Child in ICU recovering from TBI." I shut the screen. My reflection in the glass next to Ava's bed looked blurry, exhausted, mute. But still there. On day 19 in the hospital, as early summer light began to slip through the frosted window of the recovery room, I saw Ava's pinky finger move. At first I thought I imagined it. I was gently wiping her wrist with a warm cloth, my eyes sore from so many near sleepless nights. But the motion came again. Slow, deliberate, like her little hand was trying to find its way back to this world. I lunged forward, breath catching in my chest. Ava? Mommy. Can you hear me, baby? No reply. Just another soft twitch, this time her whole hand. I burst into tears, heart pounding like war drums. In that moment, I didn't need a doctor to confirm anything. Just the fact that she was still there, still responding, was enough to release a breath I must have been holding for weeks. Amelia, the head nurse, rushed in when I pressed the call button. She immediately checked motor reflexes, examined her pupils, then called the on-duty physician. Not 10 minutes later, dear. Roe walked in with his usual furrowed brow, but when he saw Ava's hand curl at the prick of a reflex needle, his expression softened slightly. We're seeing signs of early consciousness recovery, he said. Her brain is starting to reconnect. This is a good signal. I nodded, gripping my daughter's hand. My thumb brushed the center of her palm and suddenly Ava squeezed back. A squeeze. I froze. Ava, can you hear Mommy? If you can squeeze my hand once. And she did. A thread-thin squeeze, but undeniable. Tears streamed down my face. Hot, grateful tears falling onto the back of her hand. I laid my forehead on her arm, sobbing like a child. She hadn't gone anywhere. The next day, Ava blinked, an unconscious flutter. Her eyelids were swollen from medication and fluid retention, but they moved. I barely left her side, reading aloud from the short stories she used to love. The Curious Whale book Ethan bought her on a business trip to Seattle. Every time I stopped reading, Ava would react, either with a faint lip movement or a subtle finger twitch. Once I could have sworn I heard a sigh from the bed, weak, thin but real. Doctors began adjusting her meds, gradually reducing sedation to allow her body to respond on its own. Over the next few days, Ava flinched when touched too roughly, pursed her lips when I cleaned her mouth. I held her hand through every blood pressure check, every 4 drip, every long high-pitched monitor beep. We developed our own silent language. 1 squeeze for yes, 2 for no, 3 for something I didn't dare hope for but waited on anyway. Tuesday night, as I was buttoning her gown, Ava suddenly squeezed my hand 3 times. Rhythmic. I stopped breathing. 3 squeezes. Ava, are you saying you love me? 3 more squeezes. Stronger this time. I broke down. No sound, just that caught, strangled sob stuck in my throat, my heart, my lungs. My sweet girl. I love you too. More than anything else in this whole world. Nurse Amelia walked in just then. She looked at Ava's tiny hand gripping mine and gave a small nod. She's coming back, she whispered. We'll take it 1 step at a time. The day Ava opened her eyes, I was rereading a passage from the book about the lonely whale searching for its mother. Her eyelids trembled, then cracked open like the light was too much. Her pupils darted slightly. I leaned in, careful not to let my tears fall on her face. Ava, it's Mom. If you can see me, blink. 2 blinks. Slow. Faint. But real. The room went still, filled only with the steady beeping of the heart monitor and my trembling breath. I placed my hand on Ava's forehead and I could feel her skin warming, not just from temperature but from life slowly returning. She tried to move her lips. No sound came out. I leaned in closer and whispered, "You don't have to speak, sweetheart. Just stay here with me." Sunlight streamed through the window, filtered by the swaying birch trees, casting shimmering patterns on the cold tile floor. I imagined Ethan standing somewhere near the door, arms crossed, smiling the way he used to after every one of Ava's fevers. I promised I'd take care of her, for both of us, I murmured. Our little girl's fighting, you see that? I began keeping a recovery journal for Ava. Day by day. I recorded every hand squeeze, every eye flicker, every pursed lip. Tiny things maybe, but to me they were entire galaxies. I also started putting up new photos on the wall. Ava grinning by Bear Creek Lake, all 3 of us during our Yellowstone trip, Ethan wearing that ridiculous red beanie next to the camper van. I told Ava stories about her dad, the builder who used to sketch cabins on napkins, the man who switched shifts just to take her hiking. Ava, I'd say while brushing her hair, your dad always believed you were the strongest kid in the world. She gave my hand a squeeze. Do you remember him? Another squeeze. I placed my hand gently on her cheek. We're gonna get through this. For Dad. For you. For me. Outside the room, the sky turned a soft purple. Summer was drawing near. And so was Ava. 34 days after the accident, while I was curled up in the plastic blue chair beside Ava's bed, Attorney Jeremy Callahan walked in holding a thick folder and wearing that composed expression of someone who brings news that can change your life. I just came from the meeting with the insurance reps, he said quietly but firmly. They've made a formal settlement offer. I looked up, still holding Ava's hand as she slept. Her lips slightly parted, breathing through her nose. Her face was less swollen now, but still pale. I nodded. Jeremy sat across from me and spread the papers on the table. He pointed to a figure in the middle of the second page. I leaned in, glanced, and froze. The number was clear. $7,800,000. I didn't speak. I didn't blink. All I heard was the echo of thunder inside a dry sky. The driver, David Bowers, is facing at least 3 felony charges, Jeremy explained calmly. He already had 2 unresolved DUI cases. The insurance company doesn't want to drag this out in court. They're aiming for a fast settlement. This is just their initial offer. I believe we can negotiate for more. I still hadn't said anything. In my head, numbers lined up like dominoes. ICU room fees, brain monitoring machines, sedatives, neurotherapy, rehab, transfer to a specialized facility, school tuition if Ava needs an assisted learning program for years. Jeremy gently nudged the file toward me. You don't have to decide today, he said. But I recommend you start thinking about how to manage this money sustainably, especially if you plan to establish an independent medical trust for Ava. My fingers trembled as I folded the document. We can help you set up a special needs trust, not only to manage expenses but to legally protect Ava's rights in the long run, Jeremy continued. We have financial planners, tax experts, and a medical advisory team to help estimate costs across each treatment phase. I nodded. I want all of it to go to Ava. Jeremy paused. I don't need any of it for myself, I said. No house, no car, no personal savings. Just whatever it takes for her to live, to learn, to recover, however far medicine can take her. He looked at me contemplative. Not many people say that right away, he admitted. Most ask about emotional damages for themselves. But I get it. There's no amount that makes up for Ethan dying or Ava suffering a brain injury, I said, my voice low. I don't need money to feel better. I need my child to have the life that was stolen from her. Jeremy sat quietly for a moment, then nodded and made a quick note in the folder. I'll start the paperwork for the trust, he said. We'll do it right, legally sound, and no one, and I mean no one, will touch that money but Ava. That night, I sat beside her bed, holding her hand gently in my lap. You know, I whispered, someone just sent Mommy a very large check to make up for what we've lost. Ava didn't open her eyes, but her fingers tightened around mine. I let out a soft laugh through my breath. I can't use that money to bring Daddy back. I can't use it to erase the scar on your head or change what happened. But I can turn it into something that would make him proud. I inhaled deeply. I'll use it so you can learn to walk again without worrying about insurance cutting off coverage. So you can study on adaptive tech if you need to. So we have a transport van, speech therapy, cognitive recovery specialists. So if you want to dance again, even if it's on one leg, you'll have a studio that works for you. I leaned down and pressed my forehead gently to her tiny hand. We're not just going to survive, sweetheart. We're going to live with meaning. 3 days later, I signed the official paperwork to establish the trust, the Ava Carter Future Fund. The funds were divided into 3 primary categories: immediate medical expenses, a long-term recovery account, and a separate education fund that could be flexibly redirected depending on Ava's progress. I also signed a legal document prohibiting any withdrawals outside of medical, academic, rehabilitative, or specialized support equipment purposes. Jeremy emphasized, we'll be monitoring every transaction. All expenses must come with invoices and medical documentation. Perfect, I replied. I have no intention of withdrawing a single cent for anything else. That evening, I printed 3 copies of the power of attorney documents, sealed them in separate envelopes, and locked them inside a small safe at the hospital. I sent one to Joanne, my former mother-in-law, The only person I trusted enough to act on my behalf if something unexpected happened. That night, Ava kept her eyes on me longer than usual. "Mom," she whispered, her lips barely moving, "does Dad know I'm still here?" I squeezed her hand tightly. "He does. He knows it well. He's been watching every step you've taken to come back." Her eyes shimmered. "Then tell him. I'm not giving up." I smiled through tears. It was the most beautiful answer I'd ever heard in my life. On Friday afternoon, my phone rang. The screen lit up. "Mom, Chicago." I sat on the folding chair beside Ava's bed, still holding her hand while the monitor beeped steadily. After a few seconds of hesitation, I put the phone to my ear. "Savannah, how are you doing?" my mother asked, her voice unusually gentle. I leaned back against the wall, eyes still on Ava's face. "I'm managing. We heard about the insurance settlement. It sounds substantial." I said nothing. She paused for a few beats before continuing, her voice firmer now. "Your father and I think we should sit down and talk. Some things shouldn't be left unresolved." "About what?" I asked flatly. "Family, Savannah. Family should share. This loss didn't just affect you and Ava. It affected all of us." I glanced away from the monitor. "How exactly were you affected?" She cleared her throat, shifting into her usual uninvited monologue. "Connor's trying to launch his startup. He needs capital to build a logistics coordination app. It's got real potential. He was heartbroken when he heard about Ethan. But if you have that kind of money, why not help him start fresh?" I almost laughed. "Connor hasn't checked on Ava once. Not a call. Not a visit. No flowers. How exactly was he affected by this loss?" "Savannah, you don't understand," she pressed on, like she was talking to a stubborn child. "We're family. When one person gets lucky, everyone should benefit." I cut in. "You're calling the death of my husband and my daughter's brain injury luck?" There was a pause. Then she spoke more softly. "That's not what I meant. It's just, your father and I are nearing retirement. Our pension won't cover everything comfortably. If you divided the amount fairly, you could still care for Ava, and the rest of us wouldn't be under pressure." "Divided fairly?" "For example, half for Ava, the other half to help the family move forward. Your father says that's the most reasonable approach." I stood up and stepped out of Ava's room into the quiet hallway. "I've established a trust for Ava," I said slowly. "The entire settlement is placed in it. You and Dad have no legal right to a single cent." Her voice shot up, wounded pride kicking in. "You're just as stubborn as your father. Think about it. Connor just needs a chance. Your dad's back can't handle construction anymore. And you have millions to spend on one child." I cut her off. "On one child who lost her father, suffered a fractured femur, a brain injury, and might have to relearn how to speak. One child who needs to learn how to walk again using a $40,000 robotic therapy system. One child who happens to be my daughter." She fell silent. Then her tone softened, polished like a speech at a charity banquet. "Then why not let your father manage a portion? At least someone in the family could help you keep track. You can't fully trust a lawyer, he's not blood." I turned toward the glass wall, gazing at the stairwell that led to the rehab wing. Jeremy was the first person to show up when I signed the admission papers. "Where were you and Dad?" "We were in the middle of Connor's birthday." "Right. A lunch that lasted 12 hours. Long enough that neither of you came to the hospital or to the funeral. Everything had to wait for Connor's birthday cake." I paused, then lowered my voice. "I don't owe anyone anything. No one in this family stood by me when I needed it. So don't use the word family to beg for a share of my blood and tears." She started to say something, but I hung up. The next day, I received an email from an unfamiliar address. charleslinwood.consulting@gmail.com. Subject: Proposal for equitable distribution of financial resources. Attached was a detailed 50-50 plan. One portion for Ava and one for internal distribution within the Carter-Linwood family. It included charts, budget tables, a section titled Investment Reserve for Connor's Tech Company, and a post-retirement wellness fund for the grandparents. I forwarded the email to Jeremy. "We need to escalate legal protections," I noted, "and limit all contact from my side of the family." Jeremy replied 2 hours later, brief and firm. "Understood." Activating full trust protection clause. They will have no access. I deleted the email. The relief was terrifying in how light it made me feel. Late that night, I returned to Ava's bedside. She had just finished a therapy session with the vibration platform. Sweat dotted her forehead and her hair clung to both temples. I gently wiped her cheek, then whispered, "Are you tired, sweetheart?" Ava gave my finger a small squeeze. I smiled, sat down beside her, and began telling her the story about the elephant who lost its herd but still searched for water every day, from the old book Ethan used to read. She smiled faintly. No sound, but her lips moved. "Real family," I whispered, "doesn't ask for a share of your pain. They show up to carry it with you." Ava gripped my hand tighter. I knew she understood. At 7 p.m., the doorbell rang just as I was organizing Ava's medication bag. I stepped into the foyer. Standing on the porch was my mother, Audrey, wearing a beige blazer far too formal for a visit to see her granddaughter, holding a paper gift bag tied with a red ribbon. Beside her was my father, Charles, his face tight like he was walking into a negotiation. Connor lingered behind them, hands in his pockets, eyes avoiding mine. "Hello, sweetheart," my mother said, her smile frozen in place. "We should talk." I opened the door. "Ava's resting. We'll speak in the living room. Make it quick." I poured tea and set it on the table without asking if they wanted any. The three of them sat down like they had rehearsed their positions. My mother placed the gift bag on the table like a sugary prelude to a knife. "We're not here to pressure you," she began. "Just want to be honest. Everyone's been affected by the accident." I sat across from them, silent. My father pulled out a folder. "We've drafted a proposal for a fair distribution. We understand the majority of the money should go to Ava. But no one should be entirely excluded from the family's benefit." Connor glanced at me, then turned away. Said nothing. My mother continued, "Connor needs a little capital for his startup app. We're thinking of selling the house since our retirement checks won't cover long-term medical costs. If you could divide things 50-50. I held up a hand. "I have something to show you before we continue." I stood, retrieved 2 photos from a drawer near the window. Both were printed at the hospital, sealed in a plastic sleeve. I pulled out the first one and laid it in the center of the table. The first photo, Ethan in his casket. His eyes closed, face eerily peaceful. A white cloth covered him from chin to chest, hands folded. The funeral home lights cast a dull yellow glow on his already pale skin. My mother flinched. Connor stepped back, face drained of color. "This is one half of that 50% split you're talking about," I said, my voice low but hitting the air like a hammer. "He stood beside me through everything. He was the only father Ava ever knew. He died right after taking her to swim practice." I pulled out the second photo. Set it beside the first. Ava, surrounded by tubes, her head wrapped in white gauze, her cheeks swollen, eyes bruised to the point of unrecognizable. One arm immobilized in a brace, the other pierced within 4 line. A ventilator, heart monitor, brain scanner, all tangled around her tiny body. I looked up at their faces glued to the photos. "And here's the rest. Ava fought for every breath to survive what you've called my stroke of luck." No one said a word. I continued, "That money is compensation for what I've lost. I won't give a single dollar to anyone except my daughter. Every cent is locked into a medical trust. There's a lawyer. There's a contract. There's insurance. No one touches it." My father clenched his hands. "You're breaking family principles." I looked him straight in the eye. "Family principles don't mean showing up to divide someone's grief. They mean being at the hospital when your granddaughter's breathing through a machine. They mean going to your son-in-law's funeral, not skipping it for a birthday lunch." My mother's tone dipped. "You'll regret turning your back on family." I gathered the photos, slid them back into the sleeve. "I won't regret protecting my daughter from people who treat pain like a balance sheet." Connor stood. "Savannah, you don't have to be this harsh." I turned to him. "You've never once called to ask about Ava. Never visited. Now you show up asking for investment in your dog-walking logistics app." He opened his mouth. Then shut it. I pointed to the door. "If you or mom or dad come back with another financial request, I'll let my attorney handle it. But if you genuinely want to be Ava's grandparents, show up empty-handed, with your hearts open." My mother shot up. You're ungrateful. We raised you and now you. Raising me wasn't an investment, I replied. It was your responsibility. And if you feel like it didn't pay off, that's not on me. I opened the door. Go. If one day Ava asks why her grandparents stopped coming around, I'll show her the pictures. Not to scare her, but to help her understand who was family and who chose to stand outside. They stood still for a few seconds, then my mother pressed her lips together, slung her bag over her shoulder. You brought this on yourself. I quietly shut the door behind them. I didn't lock it, but I made sure it was closed. When I returned to Ava's room, she had her eyes open, gazing toward the window. Where did you go? Ava asked, her voice hoarse. Just stepped outside for a bit, I said, pulling the blanket back over her. But I always come back. Always. Ava gave me a faint smile. I held her hand, thinking about the 2 photos I had just put away, 2 pieces of evidence no one could deny. 1 person gone. 1 barely survived. There's no number big enough to measure what was lost. But I could protect what remained. At any cost. 3 months after that confrontation in the living room, a cream-colored envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address, just my name, written in a familiar handwriting I couldn't mistake. I stood in the Colorado afternoon sun, light bouncing off the hot asphalt, heart sinking as I held the envelope. I didn't open it right away. Slipped it into my pocket, only taking it out after Ava had fallen asleep in the next room, her tiny fingers still curling slightly from that afternoon's physical therapy. The letter was 4 pages long, handwritten. Blue ink, slightly shaky strokes. It was from my mother. She wrote about the silence, even she couldn't explain it. About the sleepless nights since I showed her the photo of Ethan in the casket and Ava in the ICU. No one can look at those 2 pictures and come out the same person, Savannah, she wrote. We failed, you, our granddaughter, and ourselves. Your father and I have told ourselves for too long that we were still good parents just because we worked hard, paid bills, and showed up at a few milestones. But the truth is, we only ever showed up when the lights were on, not when the darkness hit. She mentioned Connor. Said that after that night he called her, and my dad said flat out, I don't want to be involved with anyone who treats pain like an investment. Then he cut off contact for 3 weeks. The letter ended with an apology, plain, unadorned. If there's even a fingernail's worth of room in your heart for forgiveness, please give us a chance to prove we can be different. I folded the letter, placed it on my nightstand, and waited in silence. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. It just felt like someone had placed a door in my chest. Barely open but not closed. The next week, Ava turned 10. I kept the party simple. A few kids from her therapy group, 2 familiar nurses, Megan and her family. We strung tiny lights along the backyard fence, laid a teal cloth across the wooden table, and set a birthday cake shaped like an octopus. Ava's pick because it looked as weird as I did in the mirror when I first woke up. At 4 p.m., a silver SUV pulled up in front of the gate. My mother stepped out, holding a gift box wrapped in pink paper with starfish prints. My father followed behind, carrying a plain brown bag. Connor wasn't there. I opened the door and said nothing. My mother murmured, "Thank you for inviting us." I hadn't invited them. I'd simply sent a message. Ava's party Saturday 3 to 6 p.m. If you come, remember, come only as grandparents. No money talk. No expectations. Ava was sitting in her wheelchair, wearing a paper crown Megan had made the day before. When she saw them, she didn't smile. Didn't look away. She just stared straight ahead. I'm hurt. My dad died. I need grandparents. Simple. Direct. No rephrasing. No invitation. My mother froze. Her lips tightened. My dad sat down slowly on a nearby bench and said, "You're right. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me." Ava looked at him for a long moment, then pointed to the seat beside her. "Sit here. I'll tell you about this week's therapy." The party went on. Not overly cheerful but not awkward either. My mother helped Megan pour drinks. My dad helped me hang more balloons. No one brought up the past or any money. At the end of the party, Ava hugged my mom. Not long, not tight. But long enough to make her eyes well up when she turned away. A month later, my mom called. "Savannah, can I come with you and Ava to the rehab center? I want to understand more about her therapy." I paused for a few seconds. Then said yes. That day, she sat silently behind the two-way mirror as Ava practiced walking with the therapist. When Ava stumbled and then pushed herself up with trembling arms, my mother clenched her chest like something inside her had just snapped. That evening before she left, she said only one thing: "She's braver than all of us put together." That winter, I signed up for a family counseling session at Cedar Springs Reconciliation Center. My mother came. My father joined on the third session. It wasn't easy. Sometimes my mom broke down midway. Sometimes I walked out of the room exhausted. But we kept coming back. Ava didn't join, but she knew. I told her about each session afterward in the language of a 10-year-old. "They're relearning how to be parents." She nodded. "Like I'm relearning how to walk, right?" "Yeah." Just like that. One afternoon, with snow falling lightly, I sat with Ava on the porch, both of us wrapped in a wool blanket, sipping hot cocoa. She asked, "Mom, what is family?" I turned to her, thought for a moment, then said, "Family is the people who stay when you're hurting. They don't have to be blood. They just don't leave." Ava watched the snow. "Then we already have a family." I nodded, squeezed her hand, and didn't say another word. We sat there until the sunset turned the white lawn orange. In that silence, I realized, for us, family didn't begin in blood. It began again in the rubble. Savannah's story is a clear reminder that family isn't defined by blood, but by what people choose to do in the darkest hours. When loss and pain exposed the truth of her relationships, she chose to protect her daughter with resolve, not empty ties. Through that journey, Savannah didn't just rebuild a life for Ava. She rewrote what family means: that true love doesn't come from where you're born, but from who chooses to stay. What do you think of Savannah's decision? Do you believe her family deserves forgiveness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more raw, heartfelt stories about family and resilience.